today it's my honor and my pleasure to welcome my good friend Pablo Ferrara. He's a professor for international law. He's an UNCLOS, that means United Nations Convention
for the Law of the Sea.
Law of the Seas, yeah. And he is also a wonderful human being, cares about the oceans. He's very much into blue economy. And we started out of the blue, basically. All of a sudden, he had contacted me over LinkedIn, and then we started the discussions, and we have been in touch ever since. And last year, the PDIE Group, which I'm responsible of having founded it, Purpose-Driven Innovation Ecosystem, has become an Earthshot Prize nominator. This is the initiative by Prince William and Sir David Attenborough to find game-changing initiatives to fix the planet by innovation. And when we were doing this, we came across different solutions and different angles in these 5 categories which the Earthshot Prize put forward. And one of it is actually revives the oceans. And we have nominated a few game-changing initiatives, and Pablo has always been also kind of in the background and giving advice and listening into some of the sessions we had in order to also connect the people which are here on the call. And I guess there will be some people still joining. I would like to, we have already done a few introductions, but maybe for the sake of completeness, we can also do it again. Just very quickly, where are you from? What's your name? Why are you caring about the oceans? And on what kind of mission are you right now? Laquelle has been speaking just before. Maybe we start with Stephen and then Scarlett, because they haven't yet introduced themselves. So yeah, please, if I may ask Stephen first.
Hi, good morning. I'm in Seoul right now. I am the Beijing bureau chief for the New York Times. Obviously, I have an interest in all things China, and that includes the topic that Pablo is going to talk about. I'm in Seoul now because most of my colleagues and myself were kicked out of China last year. It's part of the deterioration of relations with the US and China. So anyway, I'm happy to join and listen in on the conversation. It's a very important topic.
Very good. So you know Motoko Rich?
Very much, yes. She's a good friend and colleague.
Great. She's here in Tokyo. So yeah, Scarlett.
So I'm talking from Miami, Florida, and I'm one of the 14 ambassador here as part of a United Nations Association of Miami, as well as social impact movements. And what we're doing here is we creating a biggest alliance on the blue bond and the blue economy. So that's basically trying to reach critical mass to address the world's issue utilizing blue bonds, and to figure out how to help bring innovation as well through these methods. So we're working along alliance with Ocean Exchange, Seaworthy, just to name a few, and as well as create social impact such as building more awareness using technology. But my background is really like social innovation. I have a master's degree in geospatial science. I used to work for NOAA, and I'm happy to be of service.
My son's name is also Noah, so my first son's name. Okay, so maybe Adam, you had a very crisp and short introduction. Maybe you can do it briefly again.
Yes, thank you, Christian. So I'm Adam Fulford. I've been living in Japan since 1981 and working with the national broadcaster NHK since then. In recent years, I've also been engaged with the Marine Stewardship Council in a support capacity. We translate their documents from English into Japanese. We incubated their presence in the Japanese market. They're devoted to sustainable fishing. My personal driving force right now, and Laquelle, it was interesting to hear you speak about good hearts. is actually activating traditional Japanese values in the 21st century. The village values that supported communities in many different forms around the country for many years, and was ultimately destroyed by the convenience culture. And so that's my focus, and I'm looking forward to learning. Thank you.
Ana Maria.
Ana Maria.
Yes, first of all, I want to apologize for the noisy in the background, but my name is Ana Maria Sheriat. I am from Ecuador. I'm based in Quito. I'm a photographer. I have been working in photography for the last 30 years. I have published 5 books, and my main interest lately, it always have been nature and wildlife. But lately I have been very into more nature, and the last book I published is about the Galapagos, and my main interest now is like trying to document through my photography all the impact that is having lately in the Galapagos and all the seas around the world in the illegal fishing. So that's what I do, and hopefully I can be helpful for anything that can be possible.
Fantastic. So yeah, then last but not least, Pablo, you can also introduce yourself. So Pablo is one of these people who have tried to do everything what is possible in the academic world. He has been to several of these outstanding universities like Harvard, Berkeley, okay, Max Planck Institute in Germany, right?
Yes.
And you have also been in China. But maybe you can now start a little bit yourself.
Thank you very much to everyone to be here. Thank you, Stephen, for following everything from the beginning, and Christian for being such a supporter. If I were to define myself, I am an accomplisher with very good and developed tools of strategic analysis and legal analysis. Okay, I have a background in law, in sociology, political science, international relations. I have a master's in international law from UC Berkeley, PhD, law of the sea and energy law, UC Berkeley, postdoctoral from Max Planck, Groningen, and Harvard Ash Rajawali Fellowship for China. I work for the Chinese government, Argentine government, private corporations, oil and gas corporations. I mean, basically, I have been in all the areas. I have worked for the media also here overseas. I was supposed to be in India, but the COVID made it impossible. Okay. And I am an UNCLOS arbitrator because the Oceans Affairs Minister from Madagascar, who is a very good friend also, Ilenia, decided I had the merits to follow that pathway. And she chose me at the age of 38, which is quite unusual because normally those are political decisions decided within foreign offices, okay? So that I'm not the usual suspect. In relation to our particular topic, I was summoned to a Galapagos meeting in August 2020 by Christiane Jerk. She works alongside the Gallifrey Foundation, mainly Antoinette Vermeil, who is the wife of John Vermeil. They are the co-founders and co-directors of the Gallifrey Foundation. The Gallifrey Foundation is focused not only into the oceans, environment protection, but also in several other issues, including leadership, development, and some other things. But for this meeting, the Zoom took place in August last year. There were around 30 people. We were 30 people, and the reason we were summoned was to discuss the illegal and regulated undeclared fishing of the Chinese in Galapagos. Okay, Ana Maria? And we brainstormed for 1.5 hours. There were people from IUCN, from the South Pacific, North Pacific, Indian Ocean, RFMOs, from the United Nations, from NGOs, from governmental and academic places, and there was me. After long speaking about the pros and cons of RFMOs, of UNCLOS current mechanisms, of the possibilities to pass solutions locally, regionally, maybe International Tribunal for the Law of the Sea, with a case, legal opinion, maybe in the ICJ, maybe both, maybe through arbitration. I mean, we analyzed all the possible pathways and we came up with a balance, which I can provide you in written, no problem. Nevertheless, Antoinette called for any possible alternative to the existent issues, okay? And I came up with the following idea, which later became the Where's the Fish program, an organization, or WTF. I suggested, Antoinette, that the best way, at least to attack this problem of the Chinese illegal fisheries in South America or in Latin America, to act somehow in a guerrilla warfare, mutatis mutandis way. So instead of calling for diplomatic traditional forums where discussions are ongoing and they take years to come in order to get one treaty, which is, you don't know if it's going to be ratified and implemented, to go the other way around, from the inside to the outside. How do you do that? Well, the good thing about Latin American countries, even though we, after decolonization, we were Ottomanized, the constitutions are more or less the same. The legal frameworks are more or less the same because they are basically continental law. Third generation rights, which are environmental law, are more or less the same. So you can create one template of a legal injunction and submit it everywhere, okay? And that is what I propose, and this is the way we are moving forward. The first target is, of course, Argentina, which is the easiest for me. And why is it the easiest? Because we have a permanent Chinese fleet outside the 200-mile up north Falkland Islands, Adam, and up east to the EEZ in Argentina. There are several particular elements of that fleet. It stays there fishing illegally, backs and forths from the high seas to the EEZ. They fish mainly squids. The species is Ilux argentinus. It's a subspecies traditional from the southwest of the Pacific, of the Atlantic, I'm sorry. But the Ilux, it moves from the area of Tierra del Fuego in the south to the high seas farther north, then the way inside to territorial seas, and then south again to die. That is basically the route it makes. But that fleet does not only fish squid, legally and illegally, declared and undeclared. They also fish sea lions, which is forbidden, from our Peninsula Valdez UNESCO Common Heritage of Mankind place. By the way, Ana Maria, Galapagos is the first common heritage of mankind, right? We have that in common. And secondly, they fish sharks for feeding, okay? And they violate international maritime law, international labor law, several other laws related to that. They get the fuel in the port of Montevideo, where you have a black market where they sell the shark fish. The connection between that fleet and the fleet coming from the Pacific Ocean is that the fleet from the Pacific Ocean move moves backs and forths from the outside of the Californian EEZ all the way south all the year. One party of the fleet stays there, the other party goes through the Bering Straits, and they join the other party, the other fleet, which is outside Argentina. So basically, there are two fleets connected, fishing industrially the entire year. Wrote down this legal injunction. I found a way to submit the injunction at the jurisdiction of the Supreme Court. It was accepted, which is a very, very strong issue in Argentina. We had also the preliminary opinion. In the United States, it would be the Attorney General. Here it's called differently, okay? It's la Procuración General de la Nación, but it's the Attorney General. They gave the legal opinion. Now we are waiting for the Supreme Court to decide. We are asking for several issues. First of all, to provide scientific information on the situation of the squids in our. Secondly, to stop the illegal fishing. Third, to take permanent measures. Incredible amount of tools provided by international treaties such as UNCLOS, which we haven't used. We haven't ratified the Straddling Fish Stocks Agreement. We haven't delivered or submitted, if you want, the list of the United Nations Environmental Program for the oceans. We haven't submitted the experts for the IMO. We haven't submitted, all the experts we haven't submitted. So how are we going to protect our oceans if we don't fulfill our obligations? We request that there is a legal criteria in relation to environmental protection in Argentina. This is a legal proceeding a twist. The Supreme Court can take any other measure that it considers appropriate in order to fulfill the request. And we are requesting to protect the Argentine oceans ecosystem. Not only the Argentine ecosystem according to the national constitution or the Argentine environmental law, but also according to United Nations Convention for the Law of the Sea. And the United Nations Convention for the Law of the Sea is broad in the sense of protection of the ocean's environment. They don't say the environment is this and it can only be protected through these measures. And the obvious reason is that technology and science evolves at the fastest track. So in order to keep pace with that evolution, lawyers, jurists, good lawyers know that they have to keep the door open. Otherwise, it's to shoot yourself at your own feet, right? And I think that the reason they were so open in the definition was because of this, because they knew that in the future, eventually, such a situation as the one we are dealing with would come up. And what is the situation? That the possibility of the depletion of different species because they are unregulated is at the threshold. The situation is with squids, but also with other species. The FAO has already issued several reports naming several species which are already depleted, okay? And depletion means you don't find them anymore, or you find weak species or weak reproduction, fewer stocks, okay? There are several concepts for depletion. After Argentina, Ana Maria, we already have a partner in Ecuador, SEDENMA, decided to partner up with us. They are issuing the legal injunction adapted to the Ecuador legal system. They already have the funding. And after that, we are going to Uruguay. And after that, we are probably going to Colombia, which has received a very positive feedback from the Attorney General's office. I spoke in a seminar on the crime of illegal fishing, and several people from Interpol and Europol were present. They showed extremely interested, mainly when I said that fish boats from the European Union were performing IUU in our EEZ. And why is that? Because they have a strong compliance duties. And right now, compliance and social liability is fashionable, okay? And that brings me, or leads me to the next stage of the WTF program, which is Europe. We also found a funding partner in Europe, and we also found an academic partner. Not disclosed right now, but he's a very strong partner. I can disclose the preliminary strategy, which I think is going to work much better in Europe, because having worked in Europe and worked under the European Union laws, they are very, I mean, first of all, they are operative and not so programmatic. Secondly, they are very strong in competence law and consumers protection law. So it's not only about the environment, it's not only about United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, but it's also about European companies that fish, for example, tuna in the Indian Ocean, either taking illegal profit from the illegal fishing, non-declared, or making dumping. Okay, so that is a possible strategy which we may use in Europe, which is going to be probably more profitable than the traditional human rights and third generation approach. But anyway, we will probably use everything in the legal injunction. Africa is also a target. We have some interest in Madagascar and the Seychelles. And for the time being, I can say that, and I am closing with this, feedback in Argentina from the media has been very good. I have had interviews also from Venezuela, from Axios, which is an international, basically streaming corporation of media, of Stephen, who has been, well, following the evolution of our injunction from the beginning, before we submitted it. For the first time ever in the history of the Argentine executive power, they replied in a media. And that is a huge mistake. They made an interview to the Subsecretary of Fisheries, to the Secretary of the Navy, and to the Secretary of the Coast Guard in order to reply to our legal injunction, naming the injunction. I mean, my name and the name of the NGO pursuing. We were there, and they basically said, we are taking care of everything. I mean, we are taking care of 3 million square kilometers and 4,000 coast of EEZ with 5 boats, and but we are buying 3 more boats. So we are cool. Okay, we are protected. Everything is fine, and we are doing our best. And the other thing they did is they sent an email to my personal email. I know that in the United States, that would be coercion. I mean, if you are under a legal action, all contacts must be within the tribunal. You cannot contact the other party trying to coerce or send subliminal messages, in order to give an opinion. Thank you, Christian. Thank you, everyone, for your attention.
Thank you very much for this very extensive speech or talk about all the different issues. And it's always, I mean, on the one hand side, there is so much which average people actually don't know at all about what's going on. A question what we can do, and so that's very interesting from this standpoint, to open up a little bit the discussion with the participants. And I actually see that we had a few other participants joining during the call. In order for the sake of completeness, I would also like to ask them, but Adam seems to have an urgent question, so I give him the opportunity to ask his question. You raised your hands, Adam.
Yes, it's not actually urgent, but it is a question that we might like to think about as other people make their self-introductions. Would China, and maybe it's actually a question for Stephen based on his experience in Beijing, would China recognize the institution in which the injunction is presented?
I'm sorry, but do you mean the Supreme Court of Argentina?
For example, to what extent would China recognize any legal or other institution? Would your first impression be that perhaps China would simply ignore any attempt to use a legal instrument to block China's activities?
Oh, well, that's actually a great question. And I think about this a little bit in the context of the South China Sea and the litigation that the Philippines brought over China's territorial claims there. And they won a verdict, the Philippines did. Partially, I should say. But the tribunal under the law of the sea more or less declared that China did not have the claims that it says it does. And they've simply ignored that and said that had no jurisdiction. So that would be the precedent, I think, that I would look at. They wouldn't necessarily feel obliged to adhere to another country's ruling. That said, I do think that they feel some international and diplomatic pressures that can be brought, can at least force them to consider changes, for example, in like announcing moratoriums on fishing and things like that. But no, I think if a court ruling went against it, it would simply disregard it.
Thanks very much. So my follow-up question, and I do want other people to have a chance to introduce themselves. My follow-up question would be, so what happens next? Does it go straight to the diplomatic scene? Is there a likelihood of war?
The follow-up would be, okay, the first action is not verbal. You said Chinese, well, stop doing what you're doing, because you're, according to public international law, producing an environmental harm to our environment, okay? And that is basic international environmental law, trail smelter case, MOX plant case, that is already written, okay? Secondly, in Ecuador, in Uruguay, and you have all the region lined up, you have a regional rearrangement, regional public international law, and that is the way the exclusive economic zone was born 50 years ago upon the unilateral declarations of Ecuador, Peru, and Chile before the United Nations Conference on the Law of the Seas. So I'm also taking that factual precedent as an instrument to get an outcome in these different situations. So if we get the same legal outcome in all the local Supreme Courts pointing at the executive powers in order to make a different public policy in relation to this, the answer is evident. You would have a twist in the regional policy in relation to IUU. Okay.
What is that? IEUEE?
IUU is illegal, unregulated, undeclared fisheries.
Yeah, so I just wanted to also give the opportunity to introduce themselves to some people who have joined after we had already started. We have Joe Brown and we have Adria, and she's also one of the instrumental human beings who has this incredible network and has enabled us to connect with at least some of the people here. Yeah, so maybe ladies first. So Adria, would you like to just briefly introduce yourself?
Oh boy, you guys are putting me on the spot. I don't know much to say, but I'm just enjoying listening, and thank you so much for putting this call together. We've been trying to, the chat that I put together was originally created by Ambassador Jean Maines. She's the U.S. ambassador to El Salvador. And she had originally brought up the issue about the overfishing. And we had struggled with what to do about it. So I'm really glad that you're taking action, and just want to be a support system as much as I can. I did put Christian in touch with Jean. You know, she's willing to provide data from the U.S. government and support. And then also, if you need any help with anything, fundraising, connections, please let me know. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And Joe Brown.
Hey, good morning. I'm actually walking or sprinting through the Atlanta airport right now. I just got off a flight, so I'm a little winded. I apologize. No, it's great. I happened to come in halfway through, so I didn't catch the whole thing, so I appreciate what was shared. And Christian, we can talk about this offline, but I also have a friend of mine out of Nigeria who is a philanthropist and businessman who happens to be very, very close friends with the Director General of the World Trade Organization. So if there's any need to have conversations with him, he tends to field conversations, obviously, before we go to Director General. But I've spoken with Ambassador Jean and set up a call with her, and Musa is his name. So perhaps there's a step in that direction if we need to pursue that. But I know that I'm breathing heavily, so I'll turn my mic off and let you guys go.
Thank you so much. That would be a great kind of introduction, if that would be possible. Actually, the WTO Secretary General, you said, is this lady, right? And she...
Correct. She's Nigerian, and so is Musa. They were business associates when she was residing primarily in Nigeria.
And she is also actually a member of the Earthshot Prize Council before she became the WTO. Okay, so yeah, then I would say I think we have introduced everybody except Ian Shimizu, who just sneaked in and listened a little bit. He's doing something for nature preservation in forests, and he has produced an app called We Mori. I'm helping him with strategic advice and fundraising and so on. It's basically a donation app which filters the best forestry projects in the world and gives an empowerment tool to the younger generation to preserve and restore nature. Then I would, Laquelle is raising her, not her hand, but a virtual hand. So would you like to ask a question or give a comment?
Some possible actionables out there. When we're talking about converging our unique viewpoints, this is a lot in what I'm doing now with like manufacturing community solutions. So one thing and how I got introduced to the oceans was actually from Scarlett And one of the pain points she had identified was about how to bring this into pop culture. When we talk about putting pressure on lobbyists or putting pressure on governance or accelerating any of these initiatives, it's easier. What we should focus on is making sure that we're not siloed in what we're targeting as our objective. And what I mean by that is like a formula of impact is with, which is our culture, whether it's oceans, AI, no matter what it is, it's like, how can we actually go cross industry and abstract the messaging so that it's relevant into culture and push it into culture, and then have the depth of the technology that can give the insights and et cetera to make it relevant and resonant within each space. So one thing that we were addressing is we're going to be producing an event for Bitcoin 2021 in 2 weeks. We have different sponsorship tiers, and we're just asking if we want to do it at a premium level where we can get incredible exposure in a cultural industry. We have the producer of Coachella that's willing to do all of this immersive, incredible, press-worthy way of this ocean of possibility for positive change. You know, I've been shopping around for sponsorships for that. But other than that, Younga has committed, and World Bank and Spatial Web, Dan Mapes. So there's a lot of people that are wanting to support, but in ways, it's almost like, how can we support each other in a more hyper-concentrated format so that we're accelerating and moving faster, which sometimes comes around events, but not just events. What are the actionables within those events? So I just kind of wanted to invite, this can go offline, but anyone that's in this room that has interest in being a part of this event, it would be great very much to have input and contributions so that we can accelerate all of our objectives together.
Okay, and this Bitcoin 2021 event, can you say a little bit more about this? Is it about Bitcoin or cryptocurrency, or because maybe there might be a lot of people here who don't even know about cryptocurrency? Maybe you can just briefly explain what it is.
I'm going to let Scarlett speak to Bitcoin 2021, but the event that we're producing is specific to ocean. The theme is like, how can you use blockchain for positive impact? And as a theme, how do you make ocean more relevant to everyday life, even though it is everyday life? You know, the moon is affecting our ocean of consciousness, even like our 70% water in our body and in our body of Earth. Like, there's ways we can sow new narratives to make it more relevant. So the event is like this ocean of possibilities, see the change, be the chain you want to be, like blockchain, and using it for good to advance these objectives for the oceans and diversity and humanity, and how it's all integral. But I'm going to let Scarlett speak to Bitcoin 2021.
Yes, thank you so much. So Bitcoin 2021 is actually taking place here in Miami, Florida, in Wynwood. It is actually the largest Bitcoin conference in the world. The idea with this is that utilizing technology that creates impact. A lot of you heard about the recent development of NFTs as an example. NFTs are non-functional token, and they're being used as partially to do social impact, to help support certain initiatives. And that's what we're trying to do in this case, bring art, technology, and science all together to create a wider impact. As part of the initiatives here, Miami being the ground zero sea level rise is one of the key aspects to bring more awareness on a global scope. As part of some of the initiatives that here, I'm one of the official satellite programmers that we have as part of Bitcoin 2021 to create a different type of activations. So what Laquel is trying to propose is align the lines of Ocean Day, which takes place on June 8th, or we like to call it Ocean Months. We want to curate an event that not only brings awareness to the oceans, but also creates a buy-in by the public to incentivize a lot of these initiatives. So what that looks like is more about bringing impact that involves technology, art, and science. So what being the largest Bitcoin event, we see that this is a great way to tie these technologies together as part of that ocean awareness and also Ocean Month. I like to call June Ocean Month, to widen the scopes and create more of a circular economy, to help develop more of these ocean initiatives that can be broadcast globally.
Great. I see that Adam is raising his hand. Is that right, Adam? You had a question?
No, actually, I think my hand was raised from before and it just stuck up.
For Renaissance.
Yeah, right. What I was just going to quickly ask in that context is what Bitcoin and NFTs is not a partnership that I normally think about, isn't it? Ethereum. And so how does that actually build into the Bitcoin message?
Actually, we use Counterparty, which is Bitcoin. I think there's a misconception that all NFTs is on an Ethereum network, but it is also developed on Bitcoin as well. We could do either or, whether it's Ethereum or NFTs or on Bitcoin platform, just to name a few. There are actually a lot of developers who work on Bitcoin. The masses are just simply not aware of. The one thing that we are doing here is to empower the artists with this technology. For instance, I'm working online with 1,000 mermaids. There are coral reef restoration that creates art for impact. These are underwater mermaids, statues that helps not only restore the coral reefs, but create the art awareness and impact necessary to address what's happening here in coral reefs. So as an example, Florida, of course, has their largest coral reef. This is a great way to those type of impact. So that's kind of what we've done here, creating different type of initiatives. We did this with the Goliath groupers. Florida has Goliath groupers called Jewfish, and to bring more awareness and create the buy-in of the people, we create these NFTs to have a broader scope. Again, art, technology, and science is converging to show this. So a lot of the Bitcoiners more than willing to help give the support by different industries. So this is an example. We see this a lot of other nonprofits doing ocean conservation. So, I just so happens this is in my backyard, literally 2 blocks away from my office, that we're hosting on this. So yes, we're going to have an ability to create NFT drops that Bitcoin that people can create those broader awareness as an example. That being said, the whole city is actually being activated. Again, it's an on-conference that also leads up to this major event.
Interesting. Linking that also back to the original discussion about taking legal action on illegal fishery. Yes.
So that was actually a good use case. We had FWC, Florida Wildlife Conservation, had created a proposal to allow Goliath groupers to be fish. And this happens almost every other year. The Goliath groups are in danger of recreational fishing, while they themselves are often seen as not edible fish, but it's used for sports fishing. The population is low, and it's just a lack of community awareness to save these majestic animals. So creating that awareness with those NFT actually helped boost the more brand awareness that the Goliath groupers needed to help support those type of initiatives.
Pablo, do you have any suggestion or comment, or you just want to have some reflection about what has been talked about?
There is an additional topic. I will introduce it. I don't expect any feedback in the room because I have spoken with Stephen, though, about this issue, which is the conspiracy theory in relation to the reasons the Chinese are acting this way. For some people in the United States, in relation to the US-China relationship, they are under a warship relationship, undeclared warship relationship, and starvation is a means of modern warship, okay? And I don't, having worked for the Chinese government, as I have as a researcher in the South China Sea Institute, with some tasks I was requested then, I wouldn't be surprised that this kind of conduct the Chinese are performing in relation, for example, the depletion of squids has something to do with that. What I mean is, if you are going to attack your enemy, for example, weaken his feeding options, Chinese, for the first time ever, on a joint commission, natural resources of the oceans in the Atlantic and Antarctica. And I would like to use as a precedent, you don't know about this, but in the previous Kirchner administration, the Argentine government signed 214 MOUs with China, and that is unprecedented. And one of the MOUs resulted in a military space base in the province of Neuquén, which has to do with satellite coordinations. So we already have one military Chinese base in Argentina. I wonder if the outcome of this joint commission for the South Atlantic Ocean just signed will end up military base, for example. That is an open question I would like to pose. I don't have the answer. I think it's quite a tricky issue.
Yeah, and I'm always wondering to which
it has to do. Okay. No, it has to do with the current geopolitics of the British in the Falkland Islands, as well as former representative of the Navy who visited Argentina and wanted to cooperate in relation to illegal fisheries. And the Argentine government just said, no, we don't want any United States cooperation in our oceans.
What I'm always wondering is what kind of means of other type of communication and what can be done actually to approach these Chinese people, the Chinese government, and people in this Chinese government, or even Chinese influencers, change or shift this kind of way of thinking. We have the Belt and Road Initiative, which is an expansion policy where China is going the opposite direction of the Silk Road and buying ports, bribing government officers, and so on and so on. I'm talking a lot to Pakistan, for example. There's a lot of influence of China. In Africa, there's a lot of influence of China. But it's not anymore that actually these Chinese investors are seen very welcome, because they already have left a lot of burned soil behind. But I'm really wondering, because there might be a kind of an evolution of a civilization. In the beginning, when they try to actually catch up and they try to match with what we as a Western civilization have. So what I'm always wondering about is how we can, instead of going more against each other, how we can more approach each other and how we can create a better understanding about the issues on both sides, and if there is any tangible means how to filter a message and how to actually engage with people of influence in these Chinese circles, that we would not have the option to go towards war. And it's basically what I always say. I mean, we are living on this one planet, the blue planet, and we are afraid that this blue planet doesn't have enough to offer for us. We are 7.8 billion people right now, and it's supposed to still increase, especially in Africa, especially in India, maybe also in China. But what can we actually do to erase this consciousness and awareness, prevent things from escalating into a very ugly direction? That's always my big concern. And I have a good friend who is just joining now. He's from the island of Tonga. His name is, I don't know if I pronounce it right, Kaitu Funaki. He is the founder of the Dignified Pacific Initiative, or Pacific Dignified Initiative. Would you like to briefly say a few words? So you have just come online, you didn't see the discussion. It's about illegal fishery actions of Chinese people, and Professor Pablo Ferrara has actually filed legal action. So please just give a brief introduction about what you're doing. And
thanks a lot, Chris. Good morning, and I apologize for coming in. And I really hope I came earlier, but I think I have an idea now of the more like a general purpose of the discussion this morning. So I'm very grateful for the opportunity for me to come in. So I'm very open again. So I'm not really sure of the platform and which direction, but I'd like to say with my area of expertise, Pacific Island countries, again, and developing economies, developing countries are becoming more important in the geopolitics of big power. So China becomes very, very important. So yes, and Pacific is very huge. Some claim that Oceania is 1/3 of the face of the Earth. So that's huge for our little Pacific Islands, where we are in terms of capacity of having a patrol boat, and these boats are usually donated to us. It's for example, Kiribati is probably the second largest EEZ around the world, and they only have one patrol boat. So to go to the other part of Kiribati, you need to fly to Fiji in order to fly again to the other part of Kiribati. So it's really huge. And of course, these fleets, we do have a system where you have to register and you have to pay daily fees actually for the ships to basically ship in our oceans. And we do have a specific P&A agreement of how much each ship must pay. But it depends on who comes to the door and knock and say, I'd like to fish in the water, and this is my boat, I registered and I pay. And even if they come, even some of my colleagues, they do make jokes in our Pacific that when they found a ship, knowing for sure that it's actually illegally in their water, it's a question of, because the size is very different. A little small patrol boat and a big, huge fishing fleet, because you have to go away from China, for example, come from China or the Pacific. You don't just come a day and go back. You need at least a month, maybe, to stay. So you need a big, huge ship to stay there and basically sustain all your people on board. So it's huge, and usually bigger than our patrol boats. So you can just say, hey, you're not supposed to be here. We don't even have enough weapons. The big ships might even shoo away our little patrol boats. Plus, because it's huge. My colleague even said, the question is whether they have the ability to really confront the ship, or do they have enough fuel to go back to base and refuel again? So it's becoming a little of a joke in our Pacific. We're a very, very peace-loving community, peace-loving people. We don't confront people, and especially when it's not necessary. We believe people are very generous. It's a big ocean, it's a big space. So yes, when it comes to illegal fishing, we don't know, we don't have the technology to monitor who comes to the water. Even if we know, we don't even have the ability to really manage that well. So a lot of big questions. And of course, with our Pacific, even foreign policy of friends to all, it becomes a bit difficult when you, for example, China and Taiwan relationship in the Pacific. We welcome all the new friends. We also keep the old friends. So very complicated when it comes to the Pacific Islands. But yes, illegal fishing is a big threat to sustainability of the stock, of the common pool resources that I believe it's important to manage well for future generations. And I think that calling for us right now, and how do we manage that? How do we make sure we keep enough and sustain it in a way for 100 years later for our people to be help them with their challenges during their time. So this is a quick to say that yes, it is a big problem in the Pacific, and I'm sure in Philippines and Indonesia and around the world of when it comes to Pacific, it becomes a bit more serious because our people are not very much vocal about it. So, and we do have good relationships with other countries. We look for best ways not to really make it a big hassle. So it can be taken for granted if not well discussed, and everybody else join hands and see how to best create solutions that not really end up in fighting, or it's really, we have a specific way of doing that, but we have a limitation. It's very important to have ideas and get everyone's sit on a table, and we can say how we do it, and see if we could probably have more technical ways of how to express what our elders are really believe the best way going forward. So I'll just stop here. Just a quick run of how I see this topic. Sorry if I'm just running around.
Yeah, and the Dignified Pacific Initiative is putting an emphasis of a potential new economic system, which is based on reciprocity, the generosity of the human being to give and to have some, what he is a core of the assumptions of his doctoral thesis, that this thesis of reciprocity, which is also related to a raise in human consciousness, to something which I was hinting into my what was supposed to be the closing remarks. But so I mean, we now we have a little bit of a better understanding, at least the people who have listened to Pablo's talk, and we are basically also now connected, and I will an effort to Pablo has said that he will distribute some materials after the call, and then there can be individual discussions as well, and the different types of actions can be supported. And I hope to, with our purpose-driven innovation ecosystem, to be of service and support to really leverage everything what people like us can do in order to create this very necessary and very profound transition for our human race, so that we really can live and coexist together and get our acts together. So I want to thank everybody, and Pablo, if you want to have a final closing remark, that would be very nice. Thank you very much, everybody.
Yes, thank you very much. I'm open to joining you in your personal commitments. I'm a consultant to Gallifrey on this particular matter, but I am quite flexible. So my analytical capacities, if you want, can be. I already have an idea for the Pacific, so I will contact you. I think I am a supporter of underrepresented communities, and I think your community is quite underrepresented. You have never had, for example, a judge in any international tribunal, so to say. Okay, so I think there are several issues to develop. Thank you very much.